Thunderbirds 2086 holds a controversial place within the Thunderbirds fandom. Never originally conceived as a Thunderbirds remake, the series was heavily inspired by the original 1960s Gerry Anderson production. Following the end of the series, the original anime version was rebranded to the Thunderbirds franchise. Thunderbirds 2086 remains a niche and forgotten series, which remains an interesting part of the spin-off universe of Thunderbirds. Bearing no resemblance to the Tracy Family International Rescue nor their vehicles, Thunderbirds 2086 shares an interesting history behind it alongside rumors and attempts to rebrand the Thunderbird franchise for new remakes. The origins of Thunderbirds 2086 came about when Gerry Anderson was looking for a new sponsor to invest in his programs following the end of his partnership with Lou Grade in 1977. Anderson began to look for funding elsewhere to back his shows. Aware that his shows had always been very popular in Japan, he met with producer Banjiro Uemura, looking to produce a new animated sci-fi television series, Thunderhawks. The idea for the series would undergo much revision, including a new title, Terrorhawks, Order to Recapture Earth, as various ideas were thrown around, but ultimately the project went nowhere due to the belief among Japanese networks that science fiction was no longer marketable. With the Japanese release of Star Wars, however, came a sudden urgent need for science fiction on film and television. Uemura returned to the ideas he had devised whilst in consultation with Anderson, and revised them into a concept that would essentially follow the format of Thunderbirds, a series he enjoyed and had homaged in previous works. This was to be a 24-episode animated series by the name of Scientific Rescue Team Techno Voyager. The series would follow the adventures of the agents of a futuristic global rescue service and their fleet of 17 rescue vehicles, the Techno Voyager craft. The series was not successful in Japan when it first aired in 1982. Only 18 of its 24 episodes were broadcast in its original run. However, it was to find an afterlife thanks to Uemura's connections with ITC Entertainment. Presented with a ready-made series featuring various futuristic craft saving the day with the letters TB for Techno Voyager on their hulls, it was obvious that an English dub could be produced that would capitalize on the already established Thunderbirds name. It was here where the series began to be adopted to the Thunderbirds format. The 1983 English language version of Techno Voyager, created by ITC America, would be rechristened Thunderbirds 2086, and the show's characters would receive various renamings and personality changes in this new version. The original opening and closing titles were also changed, with the new opening titles featuring narration that explained the purpose of the International Rescue Organization. This narration would sound familiar to anyone who had seen the trailers of the Thunderbird Super Space Theater compilations, both sharing the same narrator and the immortal phrase, "Conceptions in rescue that can challenge the impossible." The International Rescue Organization of Thunderbirds 2086 was a far larger group which operated out of a vast city known as the Arcology, built upon a man-made island and a humongous man-made island located somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. The Arcology serves as the Earth Command Center for International Rescue Organization and a focal point for the Federation. Although the organization apparently employs hundreds of people, the main cast of heroes was limited to 7 characters. The number of Thunderbird machines in this new international rescue was also increased from 6 to 17, although several would never appear on screen. Most were substantially different from those seen in the Supermarionation series, although several borrowed heavily from those designs. Thunderbird 1, a sleek white and blue space shuttle. Thunderbird 2, a blue and silver hypersonic transport craft. Thunderbird 3, a yellow and black ground operations vehicle. Thunderbird 4, remaining as a yellow submarine. Thunderbird 5, a white and grey ground operations vehicle constructed by IRO. Thunderbird 6, Earth's orbiting space station, and equivalent to the original series of Thunderbird 5, now armed by a crew of hundreds as opposed to one of the Tracys. Most of Thunderbirds 7 to 17 were also equivalent to the pod vehicle seen within the original series. The primary characters in this new iteration of Thunderbirds were Warren Simpson, Greg Hansen, Dylan Bader, Callan James, Little JJ, Jesse Riggle, and Skipper Sampson. Thunderbirds 2086 was made without the knowledge of Gerry Anderson or members of the AP Films Century 21 Studios. Although the series featured the adventures of the Thunderbird machines of International Rescue, it did not make any mention of the Tracy family or any other familiar element of the original Supermarionation program, beyond a very occasional cry of "Thunderbirds are go!" One additional element that came into play midway through Thunderbirds' 2086 run came with the arrival of the mysterious villain Starcrusher and his terrorist group, the Shadow Axis, who were behind nefarious plots in several episodes. Although not part of the original Techno Voyager series, it was nevertheless an interesting attempt to provide a regular villain for 2086 through voiceover alone, since the original animation could not be altered enough to incorporate a new animated character. The Star Crusher dialogue sequences, usually backed by Barry Gray music, traditionally heard in association with the Mysterons, would often play out over the same electronic space footage created by Dolphin Productions for the two Captain Scarlet Super Space Theater compilations, as would sequences involving another 2086 edition, the IRO Data Cube, generally running to around 70 seconds. These data cube segments would feature a briefing from the same voice artist who narrated the show's opening titles, in which he explained the plot of that week's episode before it actually started. 2086 also redubbed additional music from the Barry Gray library, plus occasional bursts of Derek Wadsworth's score for Space 1999's second season, as well as several sound effects, most notably the Moonbase Alpha travel tube sound on the opening titles. Tracks that turned up included the Thunderbirds' fast music, and even the aforementioned Mysteron theme that was used for the series' main villain, Starcrusher. The original run of Thunderbirds 2086 in Japan was cancelled after only 18 episodes of its 24 episodes aired in 1982. The remaining 6 episodes were finally aired during a 2008 rerun of the show on the Home Drama Channel. Thunderbirds 2086 played in several international markets, including the UK, Spain, Malaysia, Italy, Portugal, Australia, and Canada, but very few countries ran the entire series. The series received very little in the way of merchandise in either of its incarnations. The series also attracted a little amount of home media merchandise. When the UK was gripped by Thunderbirds mania in 1991, ITC Home Video attempted to revive Thunderbirds 2086, this time releasing 16 episodes of the series across 3 VHS tapes, with volumes 2 and 3 sporting the classic Thunderbirds logo in a bid to attract new viewers. In October 1993, Polygram released budget tapes of Gerry Anderson episodes under Pocket Money Video, with an hour or more of magical fun. Part of this hour or more contained 10 minutes of trailers. One of these sets featured the episodes Fireball and Computer Madness, preceded by the Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons episode Spectrum Strikes Back. A DVD of the original anime dub was released in 2008 in Japan and is difficult to acquire in the UK. Aside from Thunderbirds 2086, there have been a number of other Thunderbird adaptations over the years. For several decades, Gerry Anderson had been hoping at some point he could remake Thunderbirds under his own supervision. He had sold the rights for the series to ITC Entertainment during a mid-1970s financial crisis, and therefore had to gain the remake rights back in order to reboot his beloved series. Many of his various proposals of series concepts that never took off the ground were heavily inspired by Thunderbirds. One of these was T-Force. In this series, International Rescue's HQ would have been a huge sub shielded from detection. Thunderbird 2 would have been a much larger ship, and the pod vehicles would have been customized by Brains for each rescue. Lady Penelope would have had a pink Porsche than a Rolls Royce, and was even suggested that she would have gold-plated hair so she could pick up radio waves. Even more bizarre, she would have taken pills that would have enabled her to see in the dark. Unfortunately, unsuitable financing was not available for the series, and so it never materialized. In 1993, another Thunderbirds-inspired series proposed by Anderson was GFI. The series took some of the inspiration from T-Force, but was to be a 13-episode series created in cell animation. The animation of characters would have taken place in Moscow and in London for the vehicles. Only one episode was completed, Warning, before the series was cancelled. The Russian animation turned out to look very poor in comparison with the London animation. The cost of redoing the Russian animation elsewhere made the completion of the series financially prohibitive, so GFI was abandoned. Throughout the 1990s, Thunderbirds mania was huge, and talks began over a remake. In 1994, ITC's Los Angeles head office announced that a live-action Thunderbirds film was in development and would be ready for a Christmas 1995 release. For the film's intended upcoming release, ITC reformatted 13 classic episodes for broadcast on Fox's broadcasting system's Fox Kids network as Thunderbirds USA, retitled as Turbocharged Thunderbirds. The runtime was cut down to 23 minutes as a standard US TV half hour. With the planned film unable to reach 1995, ITC was sold to the Dutch media conglomerate Polygram for $156 million. Polygram was keen on the Thunderbirds film and the Turbocharged Thunderbirds series. The re-edited version of the series saw two teenagers fall into a parallel dimension to Thunderworld, populated by the Thunderbird puppets, where they were invited to use their sophisticated interplanetary surveillance system to essentially become Thunderbird 5. They forged a mutual pact with International Rescue to take on an unseen enemy, the evil Atrocimator, aka the Hood, who wreaked intergalactic havoc and frequently threatened the Traceys using his Heckno-Hockno. The original episode titles were replaced with limp new ones. For example, The Uninvited became The Lost Pyramid, and Atlantic Inferno was replaced as Home Alone. Gerry Anderson was insistent on his name's removal from the title sequence. Turbocharged Thunderbirds debuted on US TV in syndication on the 18th of December 1994. Only one series was made, and it has never been shown in the UK. The Thunderbirds film, however, was kept promised to become a reality, now under development from Working Title Films, a subsidiary of Polygram Filmed Entertainment. Stop-motion animation or CGI were considered to complete the film was proposed by the media. Although talk of concept artwork and a script sounding very true to the spirit of the original series sounding promising, rumors began to speculate in the press that the US film execs were claiming that some of the series' premise would be unacceptable for a contemporary audience. One rumor claimed that one executive asked if some of the Tracys could be black, or to have fewer Tracy brothers. The planned photography start date for the Thunderbirds movie in August 1998 came and went. Pre-production work was suspended whilst the script was rewritten to attempt to rein the budget. Since the 1990s, Thunderbirds 2086 seems to have fallen into a home media void. While it may have made sense back in the 1980s and early 1990s to closely associate the anime with its Super Mario Nation forebear in order to help sell it, the original Thunderbirds has continued to remain in the public consciousness more than 60 years after it first aired. In the UK alone, the Super Mario Nation television series has been revived more than once since 2086 was last broadcast, to continued public interest and acclaim, and crucially does not look like a product of the 1960s. Although Thunderbirds 2086 does look very 80s, it holds an interesting place in the anime and Thunderbirds community. Most crucially, the existence of Thunderbirds 2086 takes nothing away from the 1965 Super Mario Nation original. It is important to remember that this was a series made as an entirely separate series and was later branded under the Thunderbirds format.